Wait, there's no need to rush me. I'm not going anywhere. But if we don't hurry, Misty might get suspicious. Late at night, on my wedding day, I awoke in bed to catch a glimpse of Arthur sneaking out. Curious, I decided to follow him only to witness him with his lover in the middle of an affair. I couldn't forgive him for hiding this from me. Vowing revenge, I made up my mind to execute a plan on our wedding day with the help of an ally. Just you wait. I'm going to make you both pay for making a fool of me. With that thought in mind, I prepared a special remix to play at the wedding. My name is Misty Nichols. I'm a songwriter and composer, 35 years old. Misty, this is a new track I'm working on, and I was thinking of going with this approach. What do you think? Should I add a little more detail here? It's not bad, but if you want to highlight your unique qualities, then this approach would suit her voice better. If that's the sound you're going for, I can tweak the melody a bit right now. Really, Misty, you're amazing, my trusty partner. All right, let's go with that sound there. Her name is Marigold Bennett. She's my best friend and my invaluable work partner. She is a singer and has been a professional in the industry for 10 years. I'm in charge of producing her music and work almost exclusively as her composer. We're not part of any agency. Instead, we've built our career from the ground up as a duo. She's been with me longer than any romantic partner, making her an irreplaceable presence in my life. We know each other's private lives and have shared everything, from love advice to personal struggles. By the way, it's almost here, right? Your wedding day, Misty. I bet you'll look stunning. I can't wait to see your big spotlight moment. Well, yeah, assuming everything goes smoothly, that is. Marigold looked at me curiously as I answered evasively. Despite the excitement of having a wedding, my mind was uneasy. And the reason for that was my soon-to-be husband, Arthur Thompson. Arthur and I were high school classmates. Marigold and I went to different schools, and I met Arthur in the meantime. I was part of the rock club, and I played the keyboard at the school festival. Arthur told me he was captivated watching me perform on stage. I took piano lessons as a kid, but I never found it fun. But then, seeing Miss Nichols playing, I just got drawn in. I'd never seen anyone play with such passion. I wanted to know what kind of person you were. Most people would focus on the guitar, bass, or vocals, ignoring the keyboard, but Arthur kept his eyes on me the entire time. When he spoke to me, I remember feeling surprised, but after hearing why, I began to feel curious about him too. Arthur wasn't the type to insist on his own way, but he was always mindful of others. He was more of the studious, introspective type who'd rather listen to others than talk about himself. A great listener, Arthur. I was drawn to him as he slowly started sharing his own thoughts and feelings with me. Soon, we were calling each other by our first names, and before we knew it, we'd become a couple. After graduation, we started living together, promising to marry once we saved up enough. However, years passed without him bringing up the topic of marriage. Finally, frustrated, I initiated the conversation, and he gave me a sheepish smile, saying something I could hardly believe. Do we really need to get married? I mean, we're already together like this. Right now I'm swamped with work, so I'd rather not trouble my office with extra paperwork. Can't we just stay as we are without the legal formalities? I was stunned, but that's not what we agreed on. You said you wanted to get married once we saved enough. Now you're telling me to just stay as your common-law wife. This feels like a scam. It's not a scam. When I researched marriage, I realized there are a lot of hassles, like changing names. But since we're engaged, everyone around us knows we plan to get married, right? So why rush? We do have the savings, but I think it'd be better if we saved even more first. In other words, he had no enthusiasm for marriage. He might be planning to brush it off with some excuse and pretend it never happened. If he can avoid marriage, then I'd prefer it this way. He's trying to dodge commitment for nothing but lazy reasons, without considering me at all. Realizing this, my suspicion of him only grew. Still, there was nothing else I resented about him aside from the marriage issue. However, being his common-law wife had its own set of drawbacks. When I brought this up to Arthur, he admitted he hadn't thought about those at all and was only focused on keeping things simple. I get it. It makes sense that you'd be anxious, Misty. But could you wait a little longer? The company is understaffed, so it's tough for me to take time off right now to handle the paperwork. So the marriage discussion was shelved again. I didn't despise his personality, but he did have a habit of putting off any hassle. He didn't lack the desire to marry, but my frustration only grew. It was around this time that I attended a barbecue hosted by Arthur's company. Family members were welcome, so I took the day off to join him. Being introduced as the director's partner, I made my rounds, greeting various people. I enjoyed conversations with the other wives, finding it a relaxing break. You're the one behind Marigold Bennett's lyrics and compositions. Really? No way. I'm a huge fan. I've been following her since her debut, and your music has encouraged me so many times. Many of the women were around Marigold's age, and I was thrilled to hear their compliments about her and our music. Suddenly, a woman I didn't know joined the conversation, addressing me directly. "Hello. Are you Mr. Thompson's wife?" Her name was Aurora Thomas, the heiress of Arthur's company. I knew of her because of what Arthur had mentioned, but this was our first time meeting. I couldn't help but wonder why she knew who I was. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Thomas. Thank you for taking care of Mr. Thompson." But of course, it would be rude to ask her that directly. I quickly straightened up and greeted her, and she returned a mysterious smile. "Oh, please, call me Aurora. I just wanted to say hello to Mr. Thompson's wife since I always worked closely with him, and I thought it'd be nice to meet you." Sorry for jumping into the conversation, but why? I didn't know much about Aurora, yet I sensed a hidden agenda beneath her polite exterior. Her charming smile felt like it masked something murky, and I shivered. "Miss Nichols, you're Mr. Thompson's common-law wife, right? Why haven't you gotten married?" Her sudden comment caused the people around us to widen their eyes. Perhaps they'd wondered the same but were tactful enough not to bring it up. Yet, she didn't hesitate to probe, as if others' emotions meant nothing to her. Her approach irritated me, and my smile faded. Well, we've both been so busy with work that we're still waiting for the right moment. But even as a common-law wife, it's really no different from being married. So it's fine. Yes, but being a common-law wife does come with a lot of drawbacks, doesn't it? You can't inherit assets if something happens, and you miss out on tax benefits. Do you think Mr. Thompson just doesn't want the hassle of those responsibilities? Getting married would give his wife peace of mind, don't you think? Aurora effortlessly voiced the very insecurities I had about Arthur. The more she spoke, the more uncomfortable I felt. Why should I have to listen to such thoughtless comments from a stranger? How could she lack such basic sensitivity, especially on a first meeting? Feeling overwhelmed with anger, frustration, and unease, I lowered my gaze. Sensing my discomfort, the people around kindly suggested we go get some drinks, pulling me away. Aurora grumbled, clearly wanting to keep talking, but the others tactfully put a stop to it. Thanks to them, I didn't have to interact with her again that day. Why had Aurora approached me like that? I would find out later. Things returned to a peaceful state after that. Work went smoothly, and everything seemed to be progressing without issue. I thought things would stay that way until an incident happened. Isn't this person obsessing over Misty? Marigold and I had started a blog to promote our work. Normally, I kept a low profile, but due to fan requests, I occasionally appeared with Marigold on the blog. Most of our followers supported it, though there were a few who didn't like seeing me in the spotlight. Among them was someone with the account name Arthur. I can't help but notice the name, since it's the same as Arthur's. Don't just brush it off. We've already reported this to the site administrators, but this person keeps making new accounts to post harassment. They're relentless, and I think we need to pursue legal action or make an official disclosure request. Other fans are concerned too. You're right. I'll think about it. I gave her a hesitant reply, unable to fully agree with her suggestion right away. My reluctance stemmed from the messages that had been flooding my personal account daily. Annoying little pest. How long are you planning to keep pretending you're popular? You're just an ugly nobody who can't do anything on your own. You should quit the industry. You'd be doing your partner a favor. So are you planning to file a disclosure request or something? Go ahead, but if you do, I'll make sure all your dirty secrets come to light. Do what you want if you're ready to pay the price. The account Marigold had mentioned, the one that recently surfaced on our blog, had been messaging me like this even before making their public appearance. If I told Marigold about it, she'd immediately start taking action. Still, something about this Arthur figure just didn't sit right with me. For someone with the same name as my husband to defame me, it seemed too coincidental. I couldn't help but feel that way. This harassment continued for over half a year. Then, out of the blue, Arthur brought up marriage. Hey Misty, don't you think it's time for us to get married? The suddenness of it left me stunned. I let out a small gasp of surprise, and Arthur laughed, clearly amused. Surprised? We've talked about this before, haven't we? I told you that once we'd saved enough and my work settled down, we'd get married. Yes, but why now, all of a sudden? All of a sudden. It's been almost a year since we last talked about it, hasn't it? This isn't sudden. If anything, it's long overdue. True, but he'd been the one delaying it all this time. For him to suddenly push for marriage like this, it felt like a change of heart. I couldn't help but feel suspicious. Since December is such a busy time, I was thinking maybe we could hold the wedding in November. How about it? Will you be able to arrange things with your work? I think so. Great. Then it's settled. We can go check out the venue soon. And we should visit Juliet and everyone to make the proper introductions. With all the details coming at me so fast, my mind struggled to keep up. My doubts about him still lingered. But despite my reservations, I was genuinely happy to be discussing marriage. After waiting so long, this was what I wanted. Still, that lingering unease wouldn't go away. So I decided to come up with a plan of my own. As time passed, the wedding preparations went smoothly. The night before the big day, we held a gathering with close family, and Marigold joined us. Is it really all right for me to be here? This is supposed to be a family-only event. And here I am. What are you talking about? Marigold, you're like a daughter to us. Absolutely. Misty wouldn't be able to do what she loves for a living without you. Let's celebrate together. Besides, I've been looking forward to chatting with you for ages. My parents are a lively pair, to say the least. Dad, especially, has the boldness of a pirate captain. Not to mention he's a great drinker. Mom, a tough woman herself, fell for that rugged charm and pursued him until he was hers. Mom's stiffness goes beyond words. There was even an incident where a burglar tried to break into our home, But she caught him and swiftly took him down. She fought him off with a bat until the police arrived and arrested him. When I first heard those stories, I couldn't help but feel a chill. My parents truly are a fearsome couple. They absolutely adore Marigold, treating her as if she were their own daughter. Since Arthur's family was also joining tonight, they led Marigold around, introducing her to everyone. "Your parents are as lively as ever," Arthur muttered, not one for overly boisterous people. He seemed a bit uncomfortable with my parents, sticking close behind me and offering a nervous smile as Marigold was being whisked from one conversation to the next. In contrast, Arthur's parents seemed charmed by mine, happily sharing drinks while they chatted with Marigold. It made me wonder how Arthur, with his more timid nature, could come from such lively, sociable parents. But since he seemed to need it, I reluctantly decided to stay by his side for the evening. As the night grew late and guests began to depart, my parents, Arthur's parents, and Marigold all stayed over at our house. I showed them to the guest rooms, and after everyone was settled, I headed to my own room and soon drifted off to sleep. In the middle of the night, however, I was jolted awake by the sound of movement somewhere in the house, coming from the direction of the front door. Curious and cautious, I crept toward the noise and found Arthur at the door, about to head out. "What are you doing? Going out at this hour?" "Oh, I was just going to the convenience store. Got a little hungry. There's food in the fridge that people brought over. Can't you just eat some of that?" No, I was really craving a new ice cream they have. I'll be right back. So you just go back to bed, okay?" He brushed off my suggestion, leaving quickly without meeting my gaze. Something about it felt off, so I messaged Marigold in the guest room. "Arthur's acting strange. I want to follow him, can you come?" Almost immediately, Marigold appeared, and after I filled her in, she agreed something felt off too. We grabbed our jackets and quietly followed him. No one would walk 2 miles to the convenience store in the middle of the night. "Right, but he's heading there on foot," Marigold whispered. "If that investigation was correct, he's probably about to." Just then, we noticed Arthur's strange behavior. He was glancing around, as if making sure no one was following him. Marigold and I quickly ducked behind a wall, holding our breath. Once Arthur seemed convinced he was alone, he disappeared into a park's public restroom. We followed him, and as we neared, we could hear Arthur's voice, along with someone else's, coming from inside. "Let's go round back and listen," Marigold suggested. As we moved behind the restroom, the unfolding scene left us utterly stunned. "Relax, don't rush me, I'm not going anywhere," a woman's voice cooed. "I have to, or Misty will get suspicious," Arthur replied anxiously. "Oh please, Misty's too clueless to notice. I mean, even when I approached her at the barbecue, she didn't suspect a thing, right?" Arthur was secretly meeting with Aurora. Peeking through a small restroom window, Marigold and I witnessed Arthur entwined with Aurora, her voice laced with a seductive sweetness as she held him close. His responses, needy and desperate, were gut-wrenching, and a chilling scene left Marigold and me ashen-faced. "I can't believe this." Shaking with anger, Marigold whispered, while I resolutely took out my phone. The restroom's ventilation window had a slight opening, making it easy to record what was happening inside without them noticing. Arthur and Aurora, utterly oblivious to being recorded, continued to indulge in each other like animals. Fighting off the nausea, I kept recording until they finished, and then Marigold and I quickly returned home, spending the rest of the night preparing for what was to come. Then the morning of the wedding arrived, accompanied by my parents who, despite all they drank last night, showed no sign of a hangover. We headed to the venue. Naturally, Arthur's CEO and Aurora were also present. I'd made sure they'd been invited, using the excuse of how kind she was to me at the barbecue. Thinking back to Aurora's smug comment that I was too clueless to notice, I knew she must have assumed this invitation was yet another part of her cover. Little did they know, the tables were about to turn. Finally, it was time for the ceremony. Arthur stood beside me, smiling blissfully. I, however, wore only a carefully crafted smile to mask my feelings. But as the entrance music started, Arthur's smile instantly vanished. His face drained of color. What the hell is this? Instead of the music that had been planned, the sound playing was a recording of Arthur and Aurora's sordid conversation from last night. Their voices echoed throughout the venue, exposing the shameful truth to everyone in attendance. Arthur was completely stunned, unable to process what was happening. Aurora, in full panic, glanced around as if she could somehow stop the situation, while the CEO shot them both a glare filled with icy contempt. "Stop it! Someone make this stop! What is this? Oh, there's no need to stop it. This is evidence of what you and she were doing last night." With that, I took the microphone from the host and began to reveal everything that had happened to the guests in attendance. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that you've all come here today only to be met with such an announcement. I, Misty Nichols, will not be marrying Arthur Thompson." A murmur of astonishment spread through the crowd, while the recording continued to play, spreading the vile truth across the venue. The guests, now horrified, looked around, trying to make sense of what was unfolding. "What is going on? Stop this audio now. Do you think you can get away with this?" Aurora's mask slipped entirely as she looked at me with wild eyes. Furious and desperate to suppress the disaster unfolding before her, she made a move toward me, but Marigold stepped forward to block her, her smile mocking and defiant. "Why so desperate to stop it? Perhaps it's because you're the voice in the recording." What? Aurora gasped, eyes wide with shock and panic, unable to comprehend how Marigold knew. Aurora and Marigold had no connection, so Aurora couldn't fathom how Marigold could possibly know about her. As Aurora's disbelief grew, Marigold just smirked, and then she gestured to everyone to look at the screen behind me. "Everyone, I'm sure you're all curious to know who the voices belong to. Today, you're in for quite a show. Please watch closely." At her signal, the venue staff began playing a video on the big screen. It captured the entire scene from last night. The guests were stunned into silence, mouths agape. Arthur's parents covered their mouths in shock, their faces pale. The CEO watched without a word, just as my parents did, all of them staring at the damning footage. "Stop it, please. Just stop. What is this? Explain what's going on." "You're the one who needs to explain," I shouted at Aurora, who continued to act defiantly despite her affair being exposed. At the sound of my voice, Aurora flinched, her body jumping slightly. Ignoring her and the bewildered Arthur, I began to explain the situation to everyone present from the very beginning. "Let me explain everything in order. The woman here, Aurora Thomas, is the heiress of the company where Arthur works. She and Arthur have been involved in an affair for nearly 2 years. This footage was taken just last night. Arthur and Aurora were shocked to realize that their actions had been exposed." The guests looked stunned by the horrifying details I shared, all of them staring at the couple with disbelief. Their relationship has lasted nearly 2 years. I have been waiting for Arthur to propose, and 6 months ago, he suddenly brought up the topic of marriage. In fact, Misty was receiving severe harassment on her blog at that time. The account was named Arthur. Misty and I thought it was Arthur who was behind the harassment, but that wasn't the case. I hired an investigative firm and contacted a lawyer to look into everything, from the account to Arthur himself. What I discovered was shocking. It turned out it wasn't Arthur, but someone else. This person was sending me harassing messages in a very masculine style, trying to tear apart my marriage to Arthur. When I had the investigator look into the content, a surprising fact emerged. The one using the name Arthur to harass me was not Arthur, but you, Aurora Thomas, who is standing right there. What? At that moment, Aurora's face turned pale as the truth was revealed. It seemed Arthur was also unaware, as his expression was one of shock, leaving him speechless. By the way, I have evidence to back this up. Furthermore, I discovered what seemed to be a diary involving Arthur from the social media associated with that account. The screen displayed the collected evidence from the investigator, revealing slanderous comments about me from the diary and information I learned through disclosure requests. Every detail was laid bare. There was no way to deny it. Completely cornered, Aurora's face turned pale, and the bravado she had shown moments ago vanished completely. I was receiving harassing messages from this account almost daily. Just before those emails started coming in, I had attended a barbecue at Arthur's workplace. I was approached by her, who publicly questioned why I wasn't getting married, humiliating me. Anger from that moment rose within me, and I glared sternly at the two of them. And then I realized when I found this blog, it was all a setup for her to approach me in front of everyone. The blog detailed the day she contacted me and revealed her feelings at that time. The content showed how she envied me for being with Arthur and purposely contacted me to harass me. It included her intentional actions to drive a wedge between Arthur and me. The guests, having learned the truth, cast scornful looks at the couple, while my mother-in-law cried uncontrollably in shame. My father-in-law hung his head in anger, shaking his fists tightly. So, this is the reason why I'm calling off the wedding. This is invasion of privacy. What you're doing is a crime. This is terrible. Why didn't you tell me before this big move? There was no need to bring this up in front of so many people. With such nonsensical rebuttals, both Arthur and Aurora left everyone, including Marigold, in disbelief. In a surge of anger, I lashed out at the two of them with harsh words. How dare you act like the victims here? Do you even understand the damage you've done? Well, how could you even think of asking me to marry you after doing something so vile? Just the sight of you makes me sick. Do you have any idea how it feels to be standing here in this dress, feeling nothing but disgust? The wedding dress I'd once dreamed of wearing had now become a symbol of betrayal and bitterness. Arthur would never understand the pain I was feeling, and this moment would forever haunt me. Every time I see this dress, I'll be reminded of today, the day I was betrayed by you. This pain, this humiliation, I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life. Do you have any idea what that's like? For the first time, I raised my voice at him, and he seemed to know there was nothing he could say to defend himself. He simply stood there, speechless. Then I turned my gaze toward the CEO, a calculated look in my eyes. Don't think this is the end. What? Arthur mumbled. Do you have any idea why I'm even standing here at a wedding ceremony with someone I have no intention of marrying? Arthur and Aurora both stared at me blankly, utterly lost. Then I delivered my final blow. To make sure you're both brought to justice, socially and professionally. The moment I said those words, the CEO rose from his seat and made his way to the stage. Excuse the interruption, he began, his voice firm. I am Aurora Thomas's father, and the CEO of the company where Arthur Thompson works. Misty informed me of this matter in advance. Dad, Aurora gasped, shocked to hear the truth revealed for the first time. Her father responded with an outraged reprimand. And I was curious to see how you'd handle yourself here. But all you've done is embarrass me and disgrace yourself, even going so far as to defy Misty so shamelessly. You're a disgrace, and now I'll impose a punishment of my own. As he spoke, the venue doors opened, and a man walked in. Allow me to introduce Aurora's husband and our company's coup, the CEO announced. What? The crowd gasped. She's married, someone whispered. Not only that, he's the coup. Unbelievable. Aurora's secret life was fully exposed. She was married and had 2 children. Her husband, the coup, glared at her with an icy gaze, while her father looked at her with contempt, as if he were looking at something revolting. Today, I'm announcing that Arthur Thompson will be dismissed from our company, the CEO declared coldly, and my daughter Aurora will also face severe consequences. Our company has no place for those who bring us such disgrace. No, they both cried, their shock palpable. Arthur looked around in desperation, and Aurora, panicking, clung to her father. Wait, Dad, please. I'm sorry, I'll end things with Arthur, and I promise I'll never do anything like this again. Please, Aurora cried shamelessly, clinging to the CEO's feet. Arthur desperately begged for forgiveness alongside her, but the CEO showed no sympathy for the two. Instead, he shouted at them, "What do you think apologizing to me will accomplish? Do you even know who you should be apologizing to? I don't care about your foolishness. Think for yourselves about what you should do." What? Arthur was at a loss for words after the CEO's remarks. In stark contrast, Aurora refused to give up. Perhaps scared of losing her status, she turned to the coup, pleading for forgiveness. However, just like the CEO, the coup ignored her. With no options left, Aurora glared at me, her teeth clenched in frustration, as she offered a deep apology. "Please, I beg you, forgive me. I won't have anything to do with Arthur again. I apologize for everything that has happened. So please, convince my dad and the others." "What nonsense are you talking about?" I replied without changing my expression to her desperate words. Did she really think that an apology would grant her forgiveness? Aurora was taken aback by my unexpected response. She hesitantly lifted her gaze, checking my reaction. "After all that you've done, there's no way you could be forgiven, right? I intend to cut ties with Arthur. You two can do whatever you want. I don't care. Just know that I will demand compensation for the divorce proceedings. By the way, trying to rely on the CEO or coup won't work. I invited you two here today to make that very clear. If the CEO or coup were to pay the compensation instead, there would be no point in putting her through hell. The reason I humiliated her and Arthur in front of my in-laws was that no one should be able to take their side. From now on, I'm going to show you both what hell looks like. You brought this upon yourselves. Taking responsibility for your actions is the least you can do, right? So be prepared. I won't let it end like this." With that, I successfully took my revenge on them. Of course, the wedding was canceled, and I demanded compensation for the divorce proceedings, along with the wedding costs. News of the incident spread online among those who attended the wedding, and the couple's identities were quickly exposed, leading to public ridicule. Aurora was driven to a state where the whole world felt like her enemy, pushing her into a mental breakdown, and she is currently undergoing treatment. Arthur lost his job, and now lives day by day. Aurora was kicked out of her home and pleaded with Arthur, who had left her, but he neglected her due to his debt, leaving Aurora wandering aimlessly. Rumors say she has been mingling with homeless people, living a life at rock bottom. Seeing the two of them suffering in literal hell brought me and Marigold great joy. The public discovered that the person harassing me on my blog was Aurora, and she became a target of my fans as well. Abandoned by everyone she was involved with, she completely lost her place in the world. From that point on, Marigold and I returned to a peaceful life. Our work thrived, and my blog became a sensation. Marigold and I decided to launch a fashion brand, which quickly made us famous, hailed as the ultimate golden duo. Why don't we write a song about that cheating ex-idiot? Something that would resonate with high school girls and those in their 20s. Exactly. We can't miss this opportunity. Once people realize it was written by Misty, I think even those who aren't fans will pay attention. Inspired by Marigold's powerful determination to turn even this situation into energy, I took her advice and started writing and composing music, resulting in a massive hit. To my surprise, it even got translated into French and was promoted worldwide. Let's stay strong, women who won't be defeated by people like them. Her words made me smile, and I felt my heart lifted.
Stop following my son, you lowlife. He's not here anymore.
3 years after breaking off our engagement, I ran into Jordy, my former father-in-law, at the hospital. He yelled at me right away.
I haven't seen Rick since that day.
I managed to reply, but Jordy's scowl didn't change.
Don't lie. You stalker. Because of you, Rick had to quit this place.
Dr. Knowles, please lower your voice. You're scaring the patients. And this woman is. Other doctors tried to calm Jordy down, but he took his frustrations out on me.
Rick suddenly quit this hospital. My son, who never defied me, had to leave because you wouldn't stop following him. Wait a minute. I told you, I haven't seen him since that day. Rick left on his own accord. Don't make me laugh. It's all your fault. Because of you, a child of a worthless mother, my son started defying me. My wife was so shocked she left me. You ruined my family.
There's no point talking to this man any longer. Not only did he insult my mother, but he also blamed me for his son and wife leaving him, completely unaware of how much he had been stifling them. I was furious. Ignoring the red-faced Jordy, I walked away.
Hey, we're not done talking.
Just as Jordy grabbed my shoulder, a startled voice rang out. My name is Liliana. My life changed dramatically when my father passed away suddenly while I was in high school. My mother became depressed and her health deteriorated. Carrying an indescribable sense of anxiety, I decided to start working right after high school to support my family and my younger brother's future. Still, I was fortunate with my work relationships. The law firm where I worked as a secretary during the day had a good atmosphere, and the boss was very kind to me. The pub where I worked at night was run by a couple and frequented by nice regulars. I loved the homey atmosphere and the meals the owner cooked. Then, a few years after I started working, it was an ordinary Friday. How unusual, a young person coming in alone. The pub's clientele was mainly people in their 40s and older. But that day, a man who looked to be in his 20s, around my age, came in alone. While other customers were enjoying their meals and drinks, this man looked unhappy. I even heard him sigh a few times. He stood out because we rarely had customers close to my age, and he had a gloomy aura. From that day on, he became a regular, coming in every second and fourth Friday. He introduced himself as Rick Knowles. Rick usually ate in silence and left after about an hour, but gradually he started talking to me and the owners, and stayed longer. Rick continued to visit on those Fridays, making small talk before leaving. I started looking forward to the Fridays when he would come in. About a year after Rick started coming to the pub, he asked me out on a date. I had been working nonstop since high school, and love seemed like a distant dream. It was then that I realized I had feelings for Rick. I was thrilled when Rick asked me out. After a few dates, we decided to become a couple. By then, my younger brother had started college, so I had a bit more time for myself. I didn't know what Rick did for a living until we started dating. He told me he was a medical resident at a private university hospital. That explained why he always seemed so down. His family was full of doctors, and his father, also a surgeon, worked at the same hospital. Apparently, he didn't get to choose where he worked. His father took great pride in their long line of doctors and looked down on anyone who wasn't a surgeon. He also held a powerful position at the hospital.
You're destined to take over the surgery department. You should be able to handle this much,
his father would say, always demanding more from Rick. Under his father's watchful eye and constant pressure, Rick was struggling. I encouraged him because I genuinely admired his dedication.
You're your own person, Rick. You don't have to follow your dad's path to be a great doctor. You're already working so hard. Thank you, Liliana. Hearing you say that lightens my load.
Even though we'd only been dating for a few months, Rick's commitment was intense. He barely had time to rest, always studying. His only free time was on the second and fourth Fridays, and our occasional dates. Despite the immense pressure from his father, Rick never slacked off in his duties as a doctor, committed to saving lives. That's why I didn't mind our limited time together. In fact, seeing Rick work so hard inspired me to set my own goals.
Boss, I've decided. I'm going to become a lawyer. I've even started studying a bit. Great. If that's the case, I'll support you all the way. If you have any questions, just ask.
I'd been considering it for a while, especially since my boss had suggested it before. Now, I was committed to becoming a lawyer. Rick was doing his best to save lives as a doctor. To be worthy of him, I wanted to be helpful to people too. So, I started preparing for the bar exam. I'd seen legal documents before, but studying them made me realize how much I didn't know. There were times when I felt like giving up, but Rick would say, "Let's keep pushing through, together." He never laughed at me for aiming high, even though I only had a high school diploma. Though our goals were different, it felt like we were in this struggle together. A few years after we started dating, Rick, now more confident as a doctor, proposed to me. I was so happy that tears started flowing from my eyes. I accepted his proposal right then and there. But a new challenge awaited me: meeting his parents. I'd heard that his mother, Catherine, was a kind and gentle person, but his father, Geordie, was quite the opposite. Even Rick, a surgeon, faced immense pressure from his father. So, I was filled with anxiety about whether a high school graduate like me would ever be accepted. Still, I want to be accepted. Nervous but determined, I headed to Rick's family home. I had recently passed the preliminary bar exam. Passing this exam proves that you have the equivalent skills of someone who has completed law school, which is a requirement for becoming a lawyer. Knowing I had passed gave me a boost of confidence. When Rick and I arrived at his home, his parents welcomed me warmly, contrary to my fears. Both Catherine and Geordie were smiling, which eased my tension a bit. But that relief was short-lived. Geordie immediately started grilling me about my education and family background. When I answered, He became furious.
So you're saying you didn't even go to college? Yes. My father passed away when I was in high school. That's irrelevant. Didn't your mother make sure you went to college? Unthinkable. Marrying into our family is out of the question.
Dad, Liliana has been working multiple jobs since high school to support her family. You can't just...
Quiet. You have no say in this. Bringing a woman like her into our home. We'd be the laughingstock of the community. Jordy, that's too harsh.
Catherine softly interjected, but Jordy was unstoppable.
Our family has a long history of producing doctors. Marrying a woman like you would tarnish our reputation. I may be a high school graduate, but I'm working hard to become a lawyer. I've even passed the preliminary bar exam.
Desperate for his approval, I mustered the courage to talk back. But Jordy's expression didn't change.
So what? You're still a high school graduate. I won't accept a woman like you as my son's wife. Leave this house immediately.
I don't remember how I got home. When I came to, I was sitting in my living room. Multiple missed calls and messages from Rick were on my phone. I'm really sorry about today. I'll try to convince them to accept us. I'm sorry for putting you through this. Although many comforting words arrived, my mind was made up. I wasn't ready to be with Rick. The idea of marrying him seemed like a fairy tale.
Rick, you're already doing great as a doctor. You'll eventually break free from your father's control. Keep pushing forward. I can't be there to support you, but I'll always be cheering for you.
I sent that message and chose to walk separate paths. 3 years passed. I was on my way to a particular place, my steps heavy. Because that place was the hospital where Rick worked. If I run into Rick, I'll try to smile. But if I encountered Jordy, the thought weighed heavily on my mind. No. I'm here for work today. I kept telling myself to stay focused as I walked into the hospital. But then, my worst fear came true. Jordy appeared before me. He seemed to notice me almost as soon as I noticed him. Leaving the doctors who were surrounding him, he walked over to me and started yelling with a face full of anger.
Stop clinging to my son! He's not here anymore! What?
Caught off guard by his sudden outburst, I was momentarily speechless.
I haven't seen Rick since that day.
I managed to say, but Jordy's scowl didn't change.
Don't lie! You stalker! It's because of you that Rick had to leave this place. Dr. Knowles, please lower your voice. You're scaring the patients. And this lady is...
The surrounding doctors tried to calm Jordy down, but he continued to lash out at me.
Rick suddenly said he's quitting this hospital. My son, who never defied me. It's because you were clinging to him that he had no choice but to leave. Wait a minute. I told you, I haven't seen him since that day. If he left, it was his decision. That's impossible. Rick changed because of you. Even my wife started defying me because of him. Don't blame me for your wife's actions too. Don't you think you're at fault here?
My frustration was mounting, and my voice grew louder. The atmosphere among the surrounding doctors was tense, but Jordy continued to look down on me.
Don't make me laugh. It's all your fault. My son started defying me because of you, a child of a worthless mother. My wife was so shocked she left me. You destroyed my family.
There's no point in talking to this man any longer. Not only did he insult my mother, But he also blamed me for his son and wife leaving him, completely oblivious to how much he had been oppressing them. My anger reached its peak. Ignoring Geordie, who was red in the face, I walked on.
Hey, we're not done talking.
Just as Geordie grabbed my shoulder, a flustered voice rang out.
Stop this at once.
I turned toward the voice and saw a middle-aged man standing there. Geordie immediately straightened his lab coat upon noticing the man.
Director, thank you for taking the time to come here. I'll make sure today's lecture goes well.
Geordie had apparently retired from this hospital a while ago and was now working part-time and giving lectures. He was happily discussing today's lecture topic. After finishing his conversation with the director, Geordie turned to me and said loudly enough for everyone to hear.
You're still here? A high school graduate with only one parent has no business being here. Leave immediately.
He had just said, we're not done talking, but now he was telling me to leave. Perhaps he wanted to show off in front of the director, but it completely backfired.
Geordie, how dare you say something so rude? Besides, I didn't come here to see you. I came to see her. What?
Caught off guard by the unexpected words, Geordie looked stunned. The director shot him a glare filled with anger.
She's the attorney handling the lawsuit this hospital is currently facing. How dare you treat her so rudely? A lawyer? Her? Enough. If you continue to be disrespectful, there will be consequences. Wait, director. There must be some mistake. She's just a high school graduate and from a single-parent home. How could she possibly become a lawyer and ruin my family?
Geordie seemed to be trying to convince himself that I couldn't be a lawyer. But the director was telling the truth. After that incident, I passed the bar exam and became an attorney. About 6 months ago, this hospital was sued by a patient's family for alleged medical malpractice. I was called in as the lead attorney, something Geordie, who had retired, was apparently unaware of. Despite the director's warning, Geordie continued to belittle me. The director confronted him fiercely.
Didn't you understand what I said? If you're rude to her, you won't get off lightly. Director!
Geordie looked overwhelmed. Realizing he was in trouble, his face turned pale. The director continued with undeniable authority.
Today's lecture is cancelled. You will never be invited back as a speaker. Furthermore, you are banned from any future involvement with this hospital. What? Wait. What do you mean, banned? Don't you understand? You're fired. Fired.
At the word fired, Geordie collapsed to his knees.
Director, this is the only place I have left. My son and wife are gone, and this is the only place where I feel I have a purpose. Please, anything but firing me. That's not my concern. I'm not foolish enough to employ an unreasonable doctor for such reasons. What? Without me, the surgery department won't function, right? Is that okay?
That's only your opinion.
The surgery department will function just fine without you. Let this be a lesson. Overconfidence can be your downfall.
The director said only that and left Geordie, who was in shock, as he led me away. Afterward, it seems Geordie was officially fired. He was also shunned by his junior doctors and has been living in isolation ever since. He tried to find another job, but his bad reputation preceded him, and he ended up opening his own practice. However, rumors spread that he judged people based on their education and family background, and he couldn't attract any patients. As for me, I won the medical lawsuit. Not only did I gain confidence, but my reputation as a strong attorney in medical issues also grew. During this time, Rick showed up at my law firm. Facing me, he apologized. I heard from the director. I'm really sorry for the discomfort my father has caused you, both 3 years ago and now.
There's nothing for you to apologize for, Rick.
Rick looked somewhat relieved. He told me what he had been up to since that day 3 years ago. Now he's living with Catherine, working at a new hospital, free from Jordy's control, and doing his best every day as a doctor. Listening to Rick's story, I felt a sense of relief. I was happy to hear that both of them had escaped Jordy's control and were living fulfilling lives. Do you remember, 3 years ago, you told me I had the strength to break free from my father's control?
Yes, I do.
Those words have stayed with me and gave me the courage to leave my father. They've been with me ever since.
I had no idea my words meant so much to you.
As I said this with a shy smile, Rick looked at me with serious eyes.
I know this might sound convenient given the circumstances, but would you consider starting over with me? Rick.
If it were me 3 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to accept. But now, I have confidence in myself.
Thank you. I look forward to our future.
And so, we decided to start our lives anew. I'm sure many challenges await us. But I believe that together, as we are now, we can overcome any obstacle.